The Calgary Flames are hoping for an improved season in 2023-2024. Jess Belmosto of Locked On Flames is here to tell us what the keys are to getting that done. All that and more next on the Locked On NHL Podcast.
You're Locked On NHL, your daily podcast on the National Hockey League. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On NHL Podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On NHL your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. And you can also now find us on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just do a search for Locked On NHL. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the show the host of Locked On Flames, Jess Belmosto. And Jess, big season ahead for the Flames. And I guess the top question is, so many players the Flames were counting on last year struggled, disappointed. Can those players bounce back in 2023, 2024?
Well, they can't get any worse. So I'm going to say yes, just because, I think last year really was a fluke. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. They shot themselves in the foot to the point where they didn't have any feet left. And there's not a world where I see Jonathan Huberdeau being a 100-point player again. But I think if the Flames can get him around 80, 85, things will be okay. I want to see Kadri do more too. I think that he was also adjusting to the new environment and new coaching, and obviously Jakob Markstrom. That's the biggest piece here. Just slightly above average goaltending will get the job done.
What do you think was the big issue with Markstrom last year, and why do you think he can straighten it out this year?
So apparently, I don't know how true this is. This is a story from one of the players, and they said that Sutter would go into the locker room after the first period, and Markstrom would be starting, and he'd be like, "Vladar, are you ready to go in?" And play the psychological warfare, basically. It'd be 0-0. Markstrom stopped everything, obviously, and the coach had no confidence in him, and it's hard to go out there and play well when your coach doesn't even believe in you. So why would you believe in yourself?
Yeah, that certainly doesn't help. And as far as Kadri is concerned, he was doing very well in the first half and then sort of petered out as the year went on. Any idea as to why it worked out that way?
I don't. I really thought that, obviously the 82 points that he had the season before was, that's not something that he would typically replicate. I don't think Flames fans ever expected that, but I don't know. It was just after the All-Star break, he just fell off the cliff and just took a nosedive with the rest of the team. But he was in Calgary, I believe, for most of the summer. So it seems like he's getting acclimated with the area fairly well and making the most out of the off season.
Well, one big change that should have an effect across the board, a new coach in Calgary. How big of a difference do you think that'll make just to clear the air and change the atmosphere a little bit?
I think that this was the biggest change and really what they needed heading into this season. There was no way they were going to be able to have a good dynamic with Daryl Sutter still behind the bench. I think that things got really bad last year because that kind of behavior went unchecked. Brad Treliving wanted to fire him. Murray Edwards, the owner, said, "Nope, can't do that because he's my friend. Go pay him $8 million to sit on the farm. It's fine." And just having someone that is familiar with the organization and with the players, and that has a good rapport with them it's important. You don't always have to make this big outlandish splash. Sometimes, doing something comfortable is what works.
So talk to me about the difference in personality and approach between the new coaching staff and Sutter.
Yeah, I think Ryan Huska is someone that I don't want to call him like a player's coach. I think that he's just not abrasive, and he knows how to act around people. I think that it's more of, a two-way conversation. It's an open door policy, but he also knows that the game has changed since, the 1970s or whenever Sutter played. It's important, I think, for him to just, again, get familiar with some of the new guys coming in too, and just be nice. I think that's the biggest piece of all of this.
Strategically, on the ice, any major differences in approach that you expect?
So apparently they're going to be taking more of an offensive approach rather than just focusing on defense and quality shots instead of just the volume, which is fantastic because that's what needed to happen. And I think that the power play being run by Mark Savard is going to be absolutely something to watch and something that the power play has needed.
Well, he was a good power play player when he was playing, so that certainly he knows what to do. Whether we could teach it, we'll have to find out. How about this? Obviously, any team looking ahead at this time of year, their prospects, who do you think will be competing for a roster spot this year in Flames camp?
I think Jakob Pelletier is really the biggest name. I think he is ready to make that jump. He was kind of held back last season, and happened with Matthew Phillips too, and Matthew Phillips walked in free agency. I think that Matthew Coronado has a really strong chance at making it, if not immediately. He'll play some time in the AHL. He will see some time with the Flames. I think that he is still, he's still young. Still a young college kid. He's got to get acclimated to the pros and playing against guys that, are 10 years older than you in some situations. So it's, just getting comfortable. I think Dustin Wolf too. Maybe Dan Vladar will be shipped out. There are some teams that are needing goaltenders. So Dustin Wolf might have a better chance of making the roster than he would have 2 weeks ago.
How about some players who are just highly regarded but may still be a year or two away?
Oh, that's hard. I would say probably Connor Zary, just because he's had some bumps in his development, not by any fault of his own. I think that, injuries happen. There was a whole pandemic that happened, and a lot of things just got in the way of most of these guys' development, right out of juniors or the draft, wherever they were coming from. So I think that he needs a little bit more time to get polished and really maybe put some more muscle on to avoid any more injury or lessen the risk of injury.
Always makes sense. A lot of junior players and younger players need to do that. So we'll keep an eye open. Jess, why don't you tell our viewers and our listeners where they could find the podcast and where they could find you on social media?
Sure. So you can tune into Locked On Flames wherever you get your podcasts, as well as YouTube. And of course, you can follow the show on Twitter at LO_FlamesPod. And you can follow me on Twitter at Jess Belmosto.
Jess, thanks so much. Always a pleasure.
Thank you so much, Gil.
Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. This app is so easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and a lot more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. That's FanDuel.com/LockedOn. FanDuel, official partner of the National Football League.